everyone. Welcome back to the Psychology of Behavior. You're turned into Module 4, which is reducing problem behavior using an applied behavior analysis approach. It's part 2 of our behavior reduction, which started last module in Module 3. My name is Robin Bertrand. I had the pleasure of virtually meeting you for Module 3 of this series. Here in this picture is the behavior analyst team at the Ottawa Catholic School Board. We hope you're enjoying learning about applied behavior analysis so far. We want to introduce and give a quick shout out to Melissa Gibson and Megan Ivany. These ladies up on stage are itinerant educational assistants who support our ABA team at the Ottawa Catholic School Board. Melissa and Meg support the assessment and implementation of ABA programming under the supervision of behavior analysts in the school setting and have been a great support behind the scenes putting together these modules. Thanks, Meg and Melissa. During this module, we will continue to discuss applied behavior analysis and the methodologies within the science that focus on reducing problem behavior. Since this module is a continuation of last, let's do a quick recap from Module 3. In Module 3, we learned that different forms of problem behavior can be targeted for reduction using ABA strategies. The purpose of changing problem behavior is not to fix a person, it's to help the person access a better quality of life. We talked about the first steps for reducing problem behavior. They involve describing the behavior clearly so that we can observe and measure its occurrence. Also, conducting a functional behavior assessment to learn what change in the environment happens routinely after the problem behavior that is making it worthwhile for the individual to continue repeating. In other words, what is the function of the problem behavior? Common functions of problem behavior that we talked about can be remembered using the acronym SEAT, S-E-A-T, which stands for sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. Once the function is revealed, we can match the behavior reduction strategy to the function, which will give us the best chance at reducing that problem behavior. Earlier in Module 2, Jen introduced the concept of reinforcement as anything that happens after a behavior as a consequence that increases that behavior in the future. When we talk about function, we are talking about types of reinforcement that occur after a problem behavior. In everyday life, we also learn to stop performing behaviors or perform the behaviors less often when they consistently lead to a poor outcome. For example, if you put on a pair of shoes that have grown too small for you, it leads to a poor outcome because the shoes hurt your feet. As a result, you probably stop wearing those shoes. In ABA, the term punishment refers to anything that happens after a behavior as a consequence that decreases the behavior in the future. Traditional parenting and teaching strategies have included attempts to use punishment as a method for reducing problem behavior. Research demonstrates when implemented ethically and effectively, punishment can bring about swift change in behavior. However, the research has also shown that punishment can be difficult to use properly and can have detrimental side effects. If punishment is not used properly, it can cause worsening problem behavior. It can lead to negative side effects such as emotional responding, escape behavior, and damaging relationships. Furthermore, if punishment is used without teaching replacement skills, a new or worse problem behavior may emerge to serve the same purpose or the same function as that original problem behavior. In ABA, punishment is only used as part of a behavior reduction plan when either other less intrusive methods have been attempted with little or moderate success, or the problem behavior is so severe that the risks of punishment are outweighed by the potential for a quicker change in behavior if punishment is used. In ABA, punishment is rarely used as a single strategy, but used in combination with other strategies, some of which we're just about to discuss. The remainder of this module will focus on reducing problem behavior using non-punishment strategies. Let's stop and think about what we've learned so far. So this is an active student response. Behavior analysts don't recommend punishment strategies because they do not work. True or false? Oh, hang on, I need to get to my timer here. Here we go. Stop and think. False. Punishment can lead to quick and swift behavior reduction if it's used effectively and ethically. Punishment can have negative side effects and can make problem behavior worse if it's used wrong. Therefore, it's rarely used unless other methods have failed, and it should be only used under the supervision of a behavior change expert. Great job, guys. Let's talk a little bit more about behavior reductions and the components that go into developing those plans. Behavior reduction plans usually involve a combination of strategies that are designed for each individual person. So it's not a cookie cutter plan. The plans are based on people's unique life situations. Often the plans are organized into 3 components, and the 3 components are antecedent strategies, teaching strategies, and consequence strategies. Antecedent strategies explain how the environment can be changed or adapted so that there's no need to engage in problem behavior because the person already has their needs met. Teaching strategies explain how to strengthen skills, usually new skills, that will allow the individual to have their needs met in easier and more acceptable ways. The problem behavior doesn't have to happen. Consequence strategies will explain how to respond when the individual does demonstrate problem behavior, so that problem behavior doesn't work anymore. In other words, it doesn't lead to reinforcement anymore. When people engage in problem behavior to have a need met, we understand that they're usually missing skills that would allow them to have their needs met in more appropriate ways. Let's use this behavior pathway to look at how teaching new skills are part of reducing problem behavior. During the functional behavior assessment, we would already have identified antecedent conditions that trigger problem behavior and consequence conditions that are reinforcing the problem behavior. Within the intervention plan for reducing the problem behavior, we will set up purposefully conditions that are known to trigger problem behavior. But before the person has an opportunity to use a problem behavior, we will help them to perform an alternate response instead and ensure that that alternate response leads immediately to that same reinforcement. Let's look at an example. So here's the alternate replacement behavior leading to the reinforcement in our behavior pathway. So do you remember the clip of Bart Simpson from Module 3? Remember the little video clips we looked at to try and guess the function? Bart was presented with a test, and usually when he was presented with a test, he quickly pretended to be sick and got out of writing the test because he left the classroom or went home. We hypothesized that Bart's faking sick behavior probably served an escape function. So in this model, we need to think about what other more appropriate ways could Bart have gotten out of writing the test. So perhaps Bart could have learned to ask his teacher for more time. If the asking for more time leads to the test demands also being removed, then asking has the same reinforcing consequences as the problem behavior did. So this is an alternate replacement skill. So do you see how now the test is presented, Bart is learning to ask for more time, and then the test demand is going to be removed. When teaching a new alternate replacement skill or selecting an alternate replacement skill, we try to select a skill that is easy to perform. So it should be easier than faking sick, for example. We also look for the new skill to lead to that reinforcement often, if not all of the time, when we're first teaching that new skill. Finally, for the new skill to become the preferred response, the link between the problem behavior and the reinforcement can be broken using a strategy called extinction. So if you look at our ABC model here, test presented, faking sick, let's remove the arrow between faking sick and the test demand being removed. Extinction is when a behavior that used to lead to reinforcement no longer leads to reinforcement. If we combine the strategies we've talked about so far in our example, when Bart asks for more time, the test will always be removed. But when Bart fakes sick, when Bart fakes sick, the test would not be removed. So we would hope that because of that dynamic, that Bart would fake sick way less often and learn to ask for more time when he wants it or needs it. Some of you may be thinking, that's not real life. Even if a person learns to really ask nicely, in real life, they may not always be able to get what they want right away. All of the time, anyways. In real life, we have to wait in lines, we have to wait for our turn, we have to do not so fun things like chores and work. We have to share attention and toys with other people like our siblings, our peers. In order for our teaching plans to be complete, we need to also teach tolerance for delays to getting what we want and ways to earn our favorite things. Let's look at our example again. So we had the alternate replacement skill that was going to lead to reinforcement. And now we're looking for a desired behavior that can happen also instead of problem behavior. So here's our example again with our behavior pathway and Bart Simpson. So removing test demands when Bart asks for more time may eliminate his problem behavior of faking sick because there's an easier way now for him to get out of the test. But if Bart asks every time, he won't earn any marks for writing tests and he may even fail his grade. We're not finished teaching Bart new skills. We need to help Bart learn the desired behavior of writing the test. To do this, we would sometimes continue to remove the test demands when Bart asks for more time, but at other times we would deny his request for more time and ask him to complete some kind of test writing. At first, the test writing requirement would be made super short and easy. So for example, Bart just might have to write his name at the top of the test and complete one question that we've made purposefully easy. Completing those required steps will be reinforced by removing the remainder of the task. So that's the same reinforcer as the original problem behavior had, but also additional reinforcement would be added that's natural to writing tests. So for example, when he's done writing that amount, the teacher would come over and give him praise, might offer him some free time until the rest of the class is finished writing their tests, and eventually, hopefully, his marks would come through. The test would be easy at first so that Bart is successful in achieving the reinforcement for completing the test demands, but gradually the length and the difficulty of the test could be increased in steps until it more closely resembles the original test. With those strategies in place, those gradually increasing demands, and making sure Bart's successful before we move to the next step may make it so problem behavior doesn't occur within that teaching process. However, if it does show up, extinction strategies would still be continued. So if Bart started pretending to be sick when more time was denied or when modified work was presented, the test would not be removed until the modified amount was complete. Here's the summary of the strategies that we've talked about so far for Bart, divided into the 3 sections of the behavior reduction plan. So in the antecedent section, modifying the difficulty of the test would make it so there's no need for Bart to fake sick because he's less motivated to get out of the test. Asking for more time would be a teaching strategy. So we would teach him to ask for more time so he doesn't need to fake sick because there's an easier way now for him to get out of the test. Writing the modified task also fits under the teaching strategies section because it's a new behavior that we want to improve success with. So writing the modified test also ends in the test demands being removed, but it also leads to those extra rewards such as teacher praise, free time, and better marks. Extinction is used when the problem behavior shows up so that faking sick doesn't work to get out of the test. Also, Bart may notice that if he misses out on free time, teacher praise, and good marks if he fakes sick. So he doesn't get any of those good things. He gets them if he writes a bit of the test. He gets that free time, gets a high five from the teacher. He notices his marks might be going up. But if he decides not to write the test and tries to escape, then he may notice that those fun things are not available to him at that time. So let's take a little minute to slow down and test our knowledge. Have a look at this chart and see if you can match the description in the little white boxes to the behavior plan component. So stop and think. So hopefully you remembered that antecedent strategies. So the one that fits in the antecedent strategies section is there is no need to engage in problem behavior, because antecedent strategies involve changing that environment. So there's no reason or no motivation to engage in the problem behavior. Teaching strategies involve learning new skills that are easier and work to access the same reinforcement as the problem behavior did. Consequence strategies involve making it so problem behavior no longer works by removing the link between problem behavior and reinforcement. And the technical term that we've been using to describe that is extinction. Super job, guys. Here's another example from Module 3, conceptualized in that same behavior pathway we used with BART. So Stewie's behavior, we hypothesized, or we guessed it to be a different function. So do you remember when Stewie was nagging at his mom for attention? Mom, mommy, mama, mama, Lois, mommy, mama. Stewie was nagging for his mom attention, and she eventually caved in and turned him and said, "What?" We thought the probable function of Stewie's nagging could be attention from mom. So here up here in our chart, we have the ABCs in the middle column that describe what we saw in that video clip. So mom taking a break and ignoring Stewie, Stewie calling on mom lots and lots and lots, and eventually parent attention as a consequence for Stewie calling on mom. As an alternate replacement skill, Stewie could learn to say mom just one time and wait. It's natural that that response would be reinforced with mom's attention often in real life. Parents are used to getting interrupted or getting their parents or getting their kiddos to come and show them things or ask them things all of the time. And a lot of the time they do get that attention right away. So instead of repeating himself over and over again, we'd want Stewie to just say it one time and wait. But Stewie also needs to learn to go away or to go find something to play with when his mom gives a signal that that attention is not available in the moment. So, for example, if Stewie approached Lois and said, "Mom," and she was on the phone or watching something important or trying to have a rest like she was in our video clip, Lois might hold her finger up to say, "Wait," or use a gesture to say go away, like a point or a gesture. That happened to me actually in Module 3 when I was filming. One of my kids came to the door and I pointed for them to go away. So I didn't have to say anything or give them much attention at all, but they saw me point and they knew that they needed to go and do something else until I could offer them attention. So to teach this to Stewie, we would need to have his mom give a silent cue to say go away or wait. And when that happens, somebody other than Lois needs to guide Stewie to find something else to play with. So maybe it's Brian, right? The dog in Family Guy. So maybe Brian could come and help Stewie leave Lois, help him find something else to play with. Brian should only give Stewie a little bit of attention, just enough to shoo him away and help him select a toy to play with. But once Stewie is playing, then Brian would provide Stewie with a reward, a high five. At first, when we were teaching, we would have Lois come and give Stewie attention too. after he's been playing for only a few seconds, because that's new behavior. And remember, we're going to gradually build that go away and play behavior. So if he goes away, picks a toy, we might signal Lois to come right away and say, "Great job, I'm ready to play with you now," or "We can talk now, I'm not busy anymore." But then we gradually would build the amount of time that Stewie needs to wait or play before his attention from mom is available. So both saying mom and waiting and going to play are both skills that Stewie needs to learn to do. And he needs to learn to sort of understand the difference between when he should wait and say his mom's name and when there's a signal that shows him, you know what, I'm going to have to wait for a longer time. It's not available right now. So he would then do that replacement skill of finding something else to do. Um, to make problem behavior not work, Lois would need to be super firm with her resolve to not respond, even if Stewie continues to nag. Since Lois would no longer be giving attention to the behavior that had functioned for attention in the past, she would be using extinction. So if it would happen again that Stewie would approach Lois and she's told him no and he continues to nag, "Mama, me, mama, mama," she would need to be very firm with not responding to him because he's demonstrating that problem behavior. So if his problem behavior gets worse, he goes on for longer, he starts yelling or starts stomping his feet, it would be important that Lois doesn't change her response. Because if she changed her response and gave attention after that worsening problem behavior, what could happen is that worse behavior becomes strengthened. So that's how worsening problem behaviors in real life can get accidentally strengthened and reinforced. Lois should also be warned that problem behavior often gets worse before it gets better. So at first, when you're not reinforcing a problem behavior, that a person is sort of used to having that preferred outcome happen, sometimes the problem behavior will temporarily increase before it starts to reduce. And that's called an extinction burst. It's important that Lois does not give in if Stewie's nagging increases because she would be accidentally reinforcing his worsening behavior. So let's look at Stewie's plan divided up into the 3 behavior reduction plan components. Notice that an antecedent strategy has been added. So an antecedent strategy is something that you change in the environment that makes it less likely that problem behavior will happen. But that change happens when no problem behavior has occurred. So it's preventative. So this example of an antecedent strategy is placing novel and fun toys in Stewie's playroom before Lois needs to go take a break. So knowing that Lois needs to take a phone call or have a nap, she could bring out some toys that have been tucked away in hiding so they're fun and exciting again, and show those to Stewie so he's less motivated for her attention at that time because he's got some new fun things to play with. Also, having those fun and novel toys in the environment might also be helpful to Brian, who's our teacher helper, because when he needs to redirect Stewie, if Stewie does approach mom and she asks him to go away, Brian jumps in to bring Stewie to find something to play with, and that might be more successful if those new fun things are laid out in the environment. So it actually could be helpful in 2 ways. The other components replicate what we talked about in our behavior pathway. So Stewie is learning to say mom and waiting. He's learning also when mom says go away or not right now that he should go find something else to play with. Lois will learn to ignore additional requests for attention after she's given the go away signal. But she'll also learn to ignore if Stewie approaches for the first time and repeats and nags. She'll learn to respond right away when he says mom and waits for a second for her to respond. Behavior reduction plans are based on the principles of behavior that have been validated by research. However, people learn in different ways and plans are individualized. In order to ensure our plans are working as we hope, we track target behaviors over time and look at graphs to assess progress. This is an example of a graph. The red line on the graph shows the number of problem behaviors that Joseph demonstrated during an observation, and the blue line shows the number of desired or replacement skills, so target new skills that showed up before the intervention. So in baseline, before the intervention, problem behavior looks to have occurred about 15 times per observation, and the alternate skills showed up 0 times. There's a vertical line that shows when the intervention started. After the intervention, the red line shows a reduction in problem behavior, while the blue line shows an increase in alternate skills. On the third observation of the intervention, there's a little blip where problem behavior was high. That could have been because of an extinction burst. So maybe the problem behavior showed up and the student or the individual was learning that the problem behavior wasn't going to work. But sometimes that can take repetition. This graph shows an ideal result for a behavior reduction plan. Often there are times when the results are not quite as perfect as the plan sets out for it to be. So the plan might require some modifications or revisions. It may require that the data collection method is checked to make sure that it's reliable. And it could also be that more teacher training is required. The goal of this module has been to provide an introductory demonstration of how in ABA behavior reduction plans are built using function-based treatments. Just a warning that it's not recommended that any caregiver should implement the procedures described here without consulting a behavior analyst or expert first. We've shared a lot of information with you in the past 2 modules about how ABA can be used to reduce problem behavior. Before we go, here's a quick video, it's about 3 minutes long, by Behavior Babe that provides a summary of the past 2 modules about the functions of problem behavior. Let's give that a go. So this video clip was from Behavior Babe, who's Dr. Amanda Kelly, and she shared her website with you at the end of that video. Sarah will also share with you at the end of our complete modules some different places to go to find out some more information about applied behavior analysis. So that's all for today. Please tune in for Module 5, which is our next module. Becky will introduce you to some common applications of ABA within the populations of students and individuals with autism and other developmental disabilities. After that, in your last module, Sarah will share some pretty cool applications of ABA that are outside of the autism and developmental disabilities box. It's been a pleasure sharing this with you, and I hope you enjoyed the past 2 modules on behavior reduction with ABA. Before you leave, I'll post a few references, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your studies. Bye.